Hello everyone, this is Turin here, and welcome to another Total War Warhammer Tournament Cast. So the series you guys are about to see took place in the Total Warhammer Cup, and it was between Pippington CC and Viking Cat 91 of Hound Esports. So it looks like we have a match between the Dwarves and the Vampire Counts. So let's go ahead and take a look at the army compositions, and we can go from there. So in the front line for the Dwarves, it does appear to be mostly blasting charges. So they do have some miners with blasting charges here, the Norgrimling's Ironbreakers who also have charges, and then on the far side he does have some miners with blasting charges as well. So this isn't a bad choice against the Vampire Counts when they come in with like a Graveguard, or sometimes Vampire players will use Skeletons or Zombies, and blasting charges are incredibly good at tearing through fodder units. And you know, even against Graveguard, they can do some decent damage. Now I actually wonder if the blasting charges from the Norgrimling's Ironbreakers would do more damage than that of the miners. That would be something interesting to test, but I definitely like this. He has a bit of a staggered formation. So what's going to happen is the Vampire Counts are going to come in, take some blasting charges, and these guys can do a bit of a tactical retreat, and then they're going to have that auxiliary support from the Grumbling Guard, some Dwarf Warriors in the back, and another group of Dwarf Warriors. So I definitely like the staggering formation from the Dwarf player over here. He does also have a Runesmith here, Dwarf Warriors like I mentioned before, and the Grumbling Guard, who are in a pretty good position right now. So their aura is probably hitting a lot of troops. So let's go ahead and actually see who it's hitting. So it looks to be hitting the Quarrelers in the back, or I think those are actually Rangers. So Rangers here and Quarrelers there, and I think it's just barely clipping the wings of these Dwarf Warriors over here. So pretty good use there. In the back, he does have Rangers, Quarrelers, Rangers, just all across the back, which is Rangers I think are a pretty good choice because the most important thing with them is they have stock. So against Vampire Counts, if they have like a Manfred von Karstein flying over initially or kind of assessing your army, they're not really going to take those into account. And then when the battle starts, they're going to have to make snap decisions on how to deal with those. And, you know, they're not going to have zombies prepared to summon on top of those guys and all that other kind of good stuff. So he does have a pretty decent firing line back here. And honestly, Quarrelers work pretty well because you're going to see Cryptors, you're going to see Mortis Engines, Corpse Carts, and these guys deal with all of those very effectively, and they do not get obstructed like powder units. So, yeah, on the flanks here, he does some more Dwarf Warriors who do have charge defense against large foes. So sometimes Vampire Counts players will use like Black Knights and very cheap Cav or even Hounds and try and get into your Rangers. So just having some cheap Dwarf Warriors on the wings, they'll hold the line pretty well. In the back, he does have two groups of Slayers, and they're going to be backed up by Grombrindle, the White Dwarf, who does have Flash Bomb. So Flash Bomb is very good against Vampire Counts because the Vampire Counts are a faction that are very dependent on their leadership and their lords, and if you're able to like cheese out their lord by flash bombing him, getting Uncle Gromby in there with his 500 weapon strength and then shooting him down with Quarrelers, you can do some pretty good work. So for the Vampire Counts, like we were speculating, he does have some zombies and the Tithe in the front line. So the Tithe is basically just a bigger group of zombies. They have 150 models against the 120 of these regular zombies. So in the back, he does have some armor-piercing Graveguard with great weapons mixed in with Cryptors. So definitely good to have some diversity because Cryptors will get punished by missile play, whereas the Graveguard will really shine. But Graveguard can get taken down by like Runesmiths and really strong Dwarf infantry lines. So it's good to have a mixture of both. He does also have a Corpse Cart with the Unholy Lodestone on the far side. So the Corpse Cart here, if you guys look, it does provide 8 melee attack and 8 melee defense, which is very, very good for these type of builds. And on top of that, it's basically like a mini Thorgrim, which is, and as you guys know, Thorgrim is very strong. So he does have that bad boy. He also has some Mortis Engine and some Fellbats. So somebody pointed out to me the other day, look at the melee defense on Fellbats. I never noticed that, but it does have 56, which is pretty insane. He does have Manfred actually on a big dragon. So when you put Manfred on the Beast here, he does get the heavy armor-piercing attack, which is decent against the Dwarves. Granted, I still prefer the Hellsteed for the speed, but it's a good choice. And I mean, these guys he's probably a better Vampire Counts player than I am. So cool. So that's pretty much it for the army composition. So guys, without further ado, let's go ahead and get this battle rolling. So this actually took place on a custom map. I believe it's called the Norskin Cliffside, and I think it was by Dark Knight. I'll also have a link to that in the comment section below. So I really like this map. It was quite a bit of fun. I did a chaos modded battle, which you guys will be seeing in the next few days, where it's Khorne versus Slaanesh, and we actually use this map, and it was very, very cool. So kudos to the creator of the map. So guys, I'm going to go ahead and fast forward a little bit because there's a little bit of posturing and kind of funny business as the players kind of feel each other out and kind of jockey for position here. So you can see he does have this firing line, so the Vampire Counts are going to have to be wary. But again, he has Fellbats, he has Manfred, so he can kind of come in and do a little bit of scouting. But Manfred does have that Fate of Buna. So Fate of Buna, even though like a lot of players are like, oh, Dwarves, I shouldn't bring magic at all. But no, Fate of Buna is still very strong against Dwarves because often they like to bring Grumbling Guard or Norgrimling's Ironbreakers, units like this. And even if you mitigate it by 25%, it still does some really good damage. I mean, these units, that amount of damage that you got on these Ironbreakers here is going to be really tough to get with your infantry. So the fact that you can just get that real quick with Fate of Buna, and I'm sure he does have the Sword of Unholy Power on Manfred, which he does, this means he's going to be able to, be really liberal with his Wince magic. So we'll go ahead and keep fast forwarding a little bit as the players get in position here. So the Fellbats are kind of swooping around the back, looking for some opportunities, doing a little bit of scouting, and they probably did see the Rangers. You can see some of these hidden units have been revealed, so the vampire counts are probably now aware of that situation. And guys, here's the most important question asked. Does Manfred have Winds of Death? No, he does not. So he has Invocation to Heck, Von Hell's Raised Dead, and Fate of Buna, which is a pretty decent choice. I probably wouldn't bring Spirit Leech myself, but you can see that there's going to be another Fate of Buna going off here, which is going to be very devastating. Granted, I wouldn't be too upset if I was a Dwarf player, because that's a ton of Winds of Magic gone. Even for Manfred, I mean, he still does suffer the penalty of diminishing returns. So getting rid of all that and, you know, having a big magnet like this isn't terrible, because they'll still hold for quite some time. So go ahead and fast forward a little bit more here. You can see the vampire counts have taken this hill, which is going to protect them from any missile play or things like that. And then they're going to have a very short distance to run down. So when they come up and over the hill, they're not going to take as much missile fire as they would have if they had engaged in like the open field here. So very well played right there. You can see the Fellbats are lurking on the sides, just waiting for an opportunity to probably dive onto some of those missiles. And the zombies and the Graveguard are kind of forming a formation down here. So you can see right here, he is going to get the zombies in formation, just line them up right here, and then he's just going to send these bad boys in. And I believe this is Viking Cat, so he's going to send those guys in, take some crossbow fire, which is great. I mean, if you can absorb ranger or any sort of ammunition on zombies, that's a big, big win for the vampire counts. Granted, the dwarves don't really have a choice, and you need to get through those guys anyway. So Manfred is going to be joining his bros on the far side, so he's joining those little Fellbats with their extremely, absurdly high melee defense. So these Fellbats technically have more melee defense than Manfred von Karstein, I think. So it's pretty cool to see the zombies kind of pushing through the fires. The blasting charges from the dwarves are coming in. It's going to do some pretty good work to these guys, hopefully. So they're getting in there, and you can see the explosions doing some good damage to the zombies, and it's pretty nice for like dealing with fodder units and things like that. So I definitely approve of that strategy there. Granted, it would be nice to use it on some of the higher tier units, but sometimes you just don't have a choice, and you still have to get through these eventually. So you might as well use them like this. So the zombies in here are going to be charging in. The Tithe hasn't taken much damage, and you can see he is kind of reserving his spoilers, and he's going to start shooting at these Cryptors right away, because Cryptors are basically the best target in the game for like missile units, as far as like dwarves versus vampires go. You can see Manfred is kind of lurking over here on the far side, and the Mortis Engine took a bit of a side route. He also did summon some zombies on top of these Rangers here, so the Rangers will take a little bit of damage against these guys, but honestly, Rangers have pretty good defensive stats. They have, let's see, 28 melee defense, which isn't terrible, and I guess their weapon strength isn't as good as I thought. And their melee attack is, what is it being debuffed by? Oh, it looks like it's the Swarm of Flies from Manfred von Karstein, I think. So, over here. Oh, welcome back. And over here in the front, we can see that the Norgrimling's Ironbreakers are fighting against some of these zombies, and they'll hold the line and probably honestly they'll barely take any HP damage. You can see when the zombies do get their attacks, it does about 2 or 3 HP damage. And over here on the back, you can see that the Graveguard are engaging against the Miners, and once the Miners do get through these zombies, the Graveguard definitely will do a pretty good job of getting through the Miners, as Miners are very like low-tier troops, but with the Dwarves, I mean, even Dwarf low-tier troops have really, really good resilience. So over here on the far side, you can see that the Cryptors did come around the far side, and they're going to be pressuring the flank, but there was 2 groups of Slayers waiting for them. So you can see the Slayers are going to jump in here, and they definitely got their Mohawks out. They're ready to party, and this is a great matchup. So definitely a little bit of a folly sending these Cryptors up and around the side. Granted, they can force path through, because Cryptors do have pretty big mass, and they're very efficient at like pushing through troops, but they're going to take some pretty big damage from these Slayers over here on the far side, and they're going to be even more mucked up. So you can see that the Viking Cat right here is just going to be pushing through as aggressively as possible, trying to get away from these Slayers, and you can see they're clawing and tearing. And then another group of Rangers is actually running into melee. So I think he's really trying to tar pit these guys and just kind of pin them amongst the Slayers. But he did do a very, very good play of summoning zombies. So zombies, anytime like you have a big, powerful unit that's surrounded, summon zombies. Because the zombies will then like take a ton of the damage. And if you guys zoom in and look here, you can see that the Slayers are actually fighting against a lot of the zombies now, which is a very, very bad situation because they have like no armor. So that means that the Slayers, will actually take a little bit of damage from those guys. And the Cryptors are going to be pushing through. So things are getting pretty wild. Over here, though, it looks like Pippington does still have his Quarreler online and pretty good health. This one group is kind of mucked down, but the other 2 groups have been firing nonstop at Manfred von Karstein and have done quite a bit of damage. Over here, you can see that the Mortis Engine is in the back, and it's doing a little bit of draining over here. Some of the Fellbats have pushed into some of these Rangers, but they have been, dealt with fairly well by the Dwarf Warriors. So Dwarf Warriors are a pretty good, like, cheap backline unit that are going to be good at dealing with Fellbats, they're good at dealing with zombies, and they're very, very resilient. So they should be able to hold the line and get through these bad boys eventually. So guys, let's go ahead and zoom up and see what's going on. Over here, we do have this corpse cart that looks like it's been kind of perusing in the back line. I think he was probably trying to avoid some of that Quarreler and Ranger fire in the beginning, but the Mortis Engine now has gotten into the center. And the Cryptors over here, like I mentioned before, we're taking a ton of damage from the Slayers. So this group is down to 7 models, but very low HP. And this group is at 9, but still at about 60 or 70%. So they took quite a bit of damage, which is, very nice. But still, these Rangers have been compromised. You can see some of these Cryptors in here are doing some massive damage. And at this point, it kind of just looks like a big cluster, kind of just straight anarchy. A lot of the Dwarves are kind of, their missiles are compromised and different things like that, but the Dwarves have done a lot of damage initially, and the frontline engagement didn't go too terribly. You can see a lot of these, well, I guess these are mostly zombies that are beat up, so the rest of the vampire count's front line is pretty healthy. But Manfred has taken a lot of damage. He's almost at his healing cap. You can see the flash bomb from Uncle Gromby doing some good work, and Grombrindle's in the pits right now, and he's fighting against Graveguard, which is a very good matchup for him. I mean, he has heavy AP damage. So when he karate chops some of these guys with his, he actually has some pretty fancy attack animations, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like he's kind of just messing around trying to figure out what he's doing. But you can see that nice splash damage against some of those Graveguard, and that flash bomb is going to be good as well. It does give -8 leadership, so against vampire counts, the flash bomb is pretty strong because, you know, the leadership is low on a lot of units. So, you know, typically it can do some pretty decent work. So over here we do have the corpse cart, which is kind of just parking right here. And this is literally perfect because if you look at these Graveguard, their melee attack is now 30 and their melee defense is 33. So it's going to buff them up quite a bit against this very durable dwarf line. You can see the dwarf warriors here fighting with Grombrindle. I think there's, yeah, it's mostly just low tier dwarf warriors. And honestly, they're holding their line against like a heavy armor piercing unit. So definitely some good stuff going on there. But the big issue for the dwarves is this Mortis engine. So this Mortis engine, and again, guys, don't be afraid to bring magic against dwarves. It's still good. Like if you get a good Winds of Death on dwarves, it'll, you know, annihilate their entire line. So over here, there was another battle going on with all the Cryptors, and you can see the Cryptors were defeated by the Slayers. So the Slayers over here triumphantly just kind of waving their axes, taking a little bit of a breather as the rest of their brethren do charge in. So the dwarves do have some reinforcements. Grombrindle certainly was getting outnumbered a little bit here, and the Mortis engine was putting a ton of pressure on him. So you can see the Grumbling Guard coming in, as well as some Dwarf Warriors, and they're going to get a great flank on these guys. You can see their leadership down to 24. And also this Mortis engine is going to get, you know, attacked by the Slayers a little bit, so he's going to need to move that back. Over here in the back, you can see the dwarves are attempting to kind of reform ranks in their missiles. So I really like this play from Pippington right here. So he spread out all his missiles. So anytime you're in a situation like this, spread out to several groups. So whenever Manfred or any sort of flying unit goes after one of your missile groups, he's going to get pressured by the other, which is going to be incredibly strong. So you can see Uncle Manny is just taking a ton of damage right now. So he's going to be charging in here and doing, you know, some decent damage to these guys. But still, every time he goes and crosses over, he's taking a ton of damage. And he's probably almost out of Winds of Magic. You can see he actually has to use Von Hells to escape. So he's using it for that 24 speed to just get away from these guys, which is really rough. And now that these Quartlers are pretty much unimpeded and they can do as they please, they can start shooting into some of these Cryptors, they can shoot into this Corpse Cart, they can shoot into this Mortis engine. And even though the Dwarf line here that's still fighting is probably not quite as powerful as the Vampire Counts line, with that Quartler support and, you know, the lack of leadership from the Vampires, I can see this actually turning in the Dwarf's favor. So if you look now at the Bounce of Power, it's about 40% in favor of the, well, 60% in favor of the Vampire Counts, with the Dwarves rocking around 40%. So it's looking very bad for the Dwarves as is, but you can see the Quartlers and the Rangers are now teeing off. And these Vampire Counts units, these big juicy Cryptors, are actually going down. So you can see the Mortis engine has decided to take its chances in the back, and it's going to be diving into some of these Rangers here. And it's getting, you know, it has good armor piercing attacks and is a pretty strong combatant itself, but it's pretty squishy. It has 40 armor. So basically, you're going to see all the Quartlers right now are just turning and firing at this guy, and they're going to be able to wear it down because every time it rides through, this other group is going to reform ranks. And, you know, Dwarven Rangers do have good leadership. I mean, all Dwarves do, which is one of the big boons of them against Vampire Counts, because Vampire Counts against low tier, well, I wouldn't say low tier factions, but against factions like Beastmen and factions with low leadership, they can mass route their units quite easily. But against the Dwarves, at least that's one thing the Dwarves don't have to worry about, is like mass routing early on. So a lot of the Rangers are getting rode down by the Mortis engine, but you can see it's taking a lot of crossfire, like I mentioned, and Manfred is basically offline. Like, he has to sit in the back and just kind of feast on some Dwarf Warriors lurking here. And you can see without Manfred and you know, in the front or any heroic units helping, Gromby and the Slayers were able to just take these guys out. And you can see the Corpse Guard actually went down to Grombrindle, and the Slayers are fighting side by side with the Grumbling Guard and are doing an excellent job against these guys. So where is Grombrindle? He should be easy to spot by his white mohawk, but I know he's in here somewhere. But anyways, a very, very close, well-played battle by both players, and it's still not over yet. The Bounce of Power is finally teetering in the favor of the Dwarves. As you can see, the Vampire Counts don't really have much left. I mean, they literally have this Mortis engine, which, you know, in its own right, did rout off a lot of these dwarf missile units because they're at like 10%, and it's been just chasing these guys down. But in having it back there, the dwarves are really able to take that frontline engagement. You can see in here, they do have a Runesmith, they have Grombrindle, and, you know, I don't see Manfred von Parstein being able to deal with that in any way, shape, or form. So we'll go ahead and fast forward a little bit as these Graveguard are finished off here. You can see Manfred flying up over the rocks, maybe trying to hide a little bit. That's actually something interesting. He could probably like fly over the rock and just like hide on top of it. But the Mortis engine is kind of the last ditch effort here. But still, the Dwarfs are pretty tattered. The Bounce of Power is about 60% in favor of the Dwarfs now. So very, very good come from behind battle from these guys. It looks like some of these Dwarf Warriors are coming in. Manfred taking some arrow fire down to 20 leadership. So basically, if he tries anything, he's just going to get gooned off the battlefield. And I would love to see just an epic slaying from Uncle Gromby. So these Rangers are going to charge in here and hopefully be able to kind of slow this thing down and allow some of the heavier duty Dwarves to get in here and, you know, deal with it. But Rangers are, you know, have been coming back from out a little bit. So any pressure that he can put on this thing will be nice. You can see there is one group here that is actually, I think, shooting at Manfred with his 200 HP. So this thing did get slowed, and it looks like Grombrindle's flash bomb. So I was about to say the vampire counts could be really abusive if they wanted to. They just ride in circles, and it looks like when it exploded, it actually knocked those guys over. But it looks like Manfred also did fall from the sky due to leadership. Very well played to both Pippington CC and Viking Cat 91 of Hound Esports. So I believe that was game 2 in the 5-game series, and this was an awesome series. You guys are in for some really, really good games. So guys, stay tuned. Got more content coming soon, and have an excellent night.